Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the CALDO webinar for today. We are starting just a couple of minutes before our starting time, just to go over what will happen today. So basically, what will happen during today's presentation is we are going to talk about supervisors. We are going to talk about how to look for supervisors and how to contact them, and everything that is associated with it. The presentation itself, it will take around 30 minutes. Afterwards, there will be a question and answer period where you can ask any questions that you may have related mostly with applying for master's or PhD programs at CALDO Universities. So you can write in Spanish or in Portuguese as you prefer. So the webinar is being broadcasted to Spanish-speaking and Portuguese-speaking countries. So we will be able to answer any questions that you have, even if you write in your native language. The presentation will consist of a mix of PowerPoints and also a brief video. We will also try to share with you some screenshots of how the information looks like in different CALDO Universities websites, so that you have an idea of what to look for when you're looking for supervisors. So we are now exactly at our starting time. So let's move on with the presentation, so that we have time to cover everything that we need. So for those of you that are not familiar with CALDO, CALDO is an office that was created by a group of Canadian universities. The role of this office is to make sure that students from specific countries in Latin America have access to information about programs at graduate level. So by graduate level, I mean master's, PhD, visiting PhD and postdoc programs or application process. Our services are completely free, so you don't need to pay anything to use our services. And we are basically an information platform. So we exist to provide information on candidates that are interested in getting to know more about our universities, how to apply to the programs, studying in Canada, and even day-to-day elements of life in Canada, such as, for example, living costs and documentation that you may need to bring once you decide to come and study in Canada. So the CALDO Universities are currently 10. So CALDO started in 2012. And at the time, there were 4 universities, therefore the name CALDO. So CALDO stands for Consortium of Alberta, Laval, Dalhousie, and Ottawa, which were the 4 initial universities. And then in 2014, it expanded to 9, and most recently to 10. So the latest element of the CALDO group is the University of Toronto, that joined like 2 months ago. If you are not familiar with the Canadian academic system, I am going to give you a brief overview of what you can expect about studying in Canada at graduate level. So once you finish your bacharelado or your maestria, you are able to enroll in a master's degree. So the master's degree is a program that most likely it's very similar to what you have in your country. So once you finish your licenciatura, you have the opportunity to do a 2-year bachelor degree, master's degree. This degree is something that will enable you to do 2 things in Canada. Either you select a thesis-based master or you select a course-based master. The thesis-based master is the master that will allow you to do research in the 2nd year, so you will need to do a thesis. For the course-based master, you don't need to do any sort of research. You just go to the classes and you are able to basically just finalize your master just by going to classes. The big advantages of a thesis-based master is that it opens the door for a PhD program later on. While if you do a course-based master that doesn't involve research, most likely you will not be able to apply to a PhD afterwards. So that's the main difference. In most CALDO universities, you will find that specific areas like the engineerings will offer the two modalities. So you can either enroll, for example, in an electrical engineering master program with thesis or with courses. And basically, it's up to each candidate to define which is the model that suits you best. The thesis-based master is usually 1 year of classes, and the second year you do research, so you do your thesis alongside the supervisor. For the course-based master program, you don't need any supervisor, so we are not going to cover those programs in today's presentation. Once you finish your master's degree, even if you finish it in your own country, you are able to apply for a PhD. So the PhD is a program that usually takes around 4 to 5 years. The program itself comprises a mix of classes and research in the first 2 years. After the third year, you are basically just doing research. So you are in the laboratory or you are working alongside your supervisor. In most cases, students are able to finish this within 4 years. Some might take 5, and usually if you are doing the PhD full-time, you are not going to need more than 5 years to complete it. Talking a bit about the CALDO services, for those of you that have contacted us, so this is something that you are familiar with. So basically what we do is we provide contact by email mostly. So most people contact us by email, and we are able to clarify any questions that you may have related to everything from the type of program that the universities offer, the admission process, the application process, the documentation that you may require. So all of the things that are needed for you to make a decision, and also that are needed for you to do your application, we can assist you with that. However, it's important to notice that CALDO is an information platform, so we are not the application platform. No one will apply through CALDO to a master or to a PhD program through CALDO. Okay, so that's something that it's important to realize. All the application to the programs are done directly at the university's website. One other thing that we do is also the following. We work with several partners in different countries that are funding agencies. So for example, in Mexico, we work with CONACYT, in Uruguay with ANI, in Brazil with CAPES and CNPq, in Colombia with Colciencias and Colfuturo. So if you are considering to bring any sort of financial assistance from your own country, we are also able to assist you in contacting supervisors. And that's something that we will be talking a bit more during the presentation. But let's focus on the essential, and let's start talking about the supervisors and how you should define a supervisor for a thesis-based master or for a PhD program. So there are 3 main things that every candidate that is interested in applying to a research program should do. The first thing is define the program. Then you should define the research area that you're interested in, and once you know these 2 things, it's much easier to define the supervisor. So usually these 3 elements are presented in the order that you see on this slide, and the identification of a supervisor becomes much easier once you identify these 2 main elements, the program and the research area. When you browse the university's website's program pages, you will find that they tend to be somewhat different. And I'm providing you here some examples, just visual examples, so that you can see how the information is provided. So when you are looking to apply to a master or a PhD program, you will usually see the list of programs from the universities in the Faculty of Graduate Studies, in the graduate programs page. And this is an example, for example, for the University of Alberta, how the information is described. So the programs are listed in alphabetic order. Then you see which type of degrees they grant, if it's a master and if it's a PhD, if it's both, and also the associated faculty. If you look at, for example, Université Laval, you will see that the layout is a bit different. Once again, the programs are presented in alphabetic order. You see if they offer master's or PhD programs for each of them, and that's pretty much the standard. Although the visuals might change a bit, the information tends to be somewhat similar within the different CALDO universities. There are some tools that we have in the CALDO website that I will show you afterwards that will help you in getting to the graduate program pages right away, so that you don't need to be browsing online and trying to find this information. Once you find the program that you're interested, so for example, let's imagine that you're interested in chemistry, you should go to the program page. In the program page, you will see different options. So you will see information for prospective students, current students, research areas, faculties, information on faculty like on professors. Usually what you should look for is the information that says research. Once you identify the menu option that says research, you should be able to access the different types of research that that department is doing. So for example, if you click research on the chemistry department at Waterloo, you will find an option that's called research groups. So the research groups is where you will see which are the different areas where people are doing research. And now you are one step closer to finding the profile of the professors, of the supervisors. For example, if you notice in this page, under each group, so analytical chemistry, for example, there's the name of a professor already. So in some cases, you are already presented with information on professors at this moment. Looking, for example, at the University of Calgary, the Department of Computer Science lists their research areas this in a somewhat different way. So they list the main research areas. There's a brief introduction about each of them. And once you identify the one that you're interested in, you should click it. And once you're inside, you should have access to the profile of the professors. Going back to University of Waterloo and the third stage, you see that once you click on the research menu option that says people profiles, you have access to the profile of the different professors. And this is where you should focus your attention when you're looking for a supervisor, because it's here that you will have the option to read about each professor and make sure that you choose the one that is mostly aligned with your research interest. You should read about different professors so that you have a very good idea of which are the ones that apply to, that are most suitable for you. And once you identify that, you should do a short list of names by each of the universities that you're interested in attending. Going back to the University of Calgary website, you see that the faculty information is presented in a somewhat different, but the logic is exactly the same. You have the professor's name, you have a brief description of each of them, and you have the link to the more complete profile of each professor. So right now I'm just giving you an overview of what you should look for, but afterwards we will go through a university website page just for you to see how this basically takes shape in a real website environment. Giving you another example, the University of Ottawa presents their supervisors in a somewhat different way. So, for example, let's imagine that you're interested in electrical engineering. Once you go to their department, you are able to look for information on faculty. So, faculty is also another name for professors. So, once you have defined which professors you are interested in, you can go to faculty if there's that menu option in the website, and you will find information on the professors. One other example, Dalhousie University. This is basically under their faculty and staff. you should see the information from professors displayed in this way. So the professor name, the email, and the research topics that is interested in. Some of them have dedicated websites, so you can also look into that. But we will talk a bit more. We will talk more about this later. So, doing a brief overview of what is the goal of looking for a supervisor, you should know that for all programs that are research oriented, the universities highly advise all students to gather a supervisor before applying. This means the following. Once you are in the process of applying for a thesis or a PhD, especially a PhD program, there is no point in applying if you don't yet have a supervisor. So what you need to do is basically make sure that you identify a professor that is interested in working with you before applying, because that's one of the main aspects that the university will take into account when they are looking into the candidate's application file. The supervisor should be someone, like I mentioned, that it's aligned with your research area of interest. So for example, if you go to the Department of Biology, you will see a lot of different areas of research. So if you're interested, for example, in cell biology, you should look for supervisors within that area. There is no point in trying to contact professors that don't have any interest or that don't have any expertise in that particular field, because they will most likely not reply to you. So it's extremely important that you are very familiar with the professors that you are contacting and make sure that whatever you want to do is the same thing that is of interest for that particular professor. Once you contact a professor, or once you decide to contact a professor, there are some documents that is always good to keep in mind to share with the professor so that he can get a good idea of what type of candidate you are and what you're looking for. Some of the documents that they might require are listed here. So the transcripts are the Certificado de Notas or Histórico de Notas. It's a document where you are mentioning basically the grades that you have in your master or bacharelado. Okay, it's the document where all the courses and grades are listed and your average is mentioned at the end. Okay, so you don't need to send your diploma. What the universities usually look for is a transcript. Language test is usually the TOEFL, IBT, or the IELTS academic are the ones that are most common, accepted by all the universities. In some cases, the supervisor might not require this information. However, if you already have it and if it's a good score that you have, it's always good to mention that you already have a particular level of language in a specific test. The statement of research is the document where you will give an overview of what is the research interest that you have. So it's a 1 to 2 page document where you will be writing about what are your research interests. And when I mention a 1 to 2 page document, it's really to highlight that the document should be a small document. So you don't need to have any project. What you need to have is an overview of what are the research interests and what is your goal for the research that you're considering doing. Then you should also make sure that you have your CV in English. The CV, it's a very simple document, so you don't need to put any detailed information about personal aspects. So you just need to mention your name, your email, your home country, and then just focus on your academic credentials. So which degrees you have, if you have published articles, in which type of school you studied, if you received any academic prizes, so things like that. Also, if you have, for example, a Skype account or your contact number, some professors like to talk with students over the phone or over a Skype call, so also mention that. And finally, some references. So if you have some professors that are good references for you, you can eventually tell the supervisor that you're interested, that you have worked with this or that professor, because they might know each other. So that's always something that could help you, especially if you have worked with professors that have good reputation in the field that you're interested in. So, just some examples of the documents that we were talking about. So the transcript is basically the document that you see in this image. It's a document where you see all the courses listed and the grades that you had during your maestria or pregrado. And basically, it's something that if it's not in English, you should translate it. Please note that for the official application, you need a professional translator to do the translation. Okay, so it cannot be you doing the translation for the application process. However, when you're contacting the professor, you can eventually translate the document yourself, just so that the professor has an idea of which are the type of that you did. So the CV is, like I mentioned, a very brief document in terms of your personal information, and then you should focus a lot on your education and research experience if you have it, and also on publications. So those are the most important aspects: education, the research experience, and publications. Talking about the statement of research. So the statement of research, there are some rules that you should follow when you're contacting a professor. So some of the rules are listed here. So the first thing is always address the professor in a professional way. So calling him Professor John, for example, or dear professor, is usually preferable than just saying hello, Mr. John. This is not usually something that you would use when you're addressing the professor. So usually you would address dear professor and then the name, and that's it. Tell the professor why you're interested in studying with him. Eventually mention a bit about your academic goals, your career goals, and also the research skills that you already have. One important thing is tell the professor if you're considering to apply for funding to an agency from your own country. So it's very important that you are able to catch the professor attention. And one of the things that they are mostly interested in is in students that are not only good academically, but if they are bringing or if they are considering to apply to a scholarship from their own country, that it's very useful for them to know. Also, let the professor know why you choose them. So why you want to work with him, and what is the main reason for you to be contacting them. You need to see this as almost applying for a job. So you are making that person aware why they should choose you and not someone else. Make sure that you articulate your ideas in a clear way. So if you are not familiar with writing in English or in French, it will be important to use someone that would be more skilled than you in copy editing the document, so in reading and reviewing it. If not, try to use some online tools like the online translators. They usually work pretty well. However, it's always good to have some human input, because sometimes the sentences might be weird and you don't want the professor to realize that, to not understand what you're writing. Don't write more than 2 words, so that sorry, more than 2 words, no, more than 2 pages. Like that the professor has time to read everything that you write. And close the letter by leaving a chance for further contact. So make yourself available for a Skype call or for a phone call. If the professor doesn't reply to you in 2 weeks, follow up, send another email saying that you are really interested in working with the professor. Please note that sometimes professors might not be in their office for long periods of time. They might have a lot of emails, so sometimes they might not always look at your email the first time that you send it. So don't worry, just be persistent and try to contact the professor at a later stage if you don't get any reply to the first email. Some things that you shouldn't do. Do not send templates that you find online exactly as you found them. So do not send letters that are just copy-paste from something that you found online. Also, don't send the same letter to a lot of professors. So eventually, if you find 2 or 3 professors that have a very similar profile, you can basically just use the same letter for all of them. However, if you are sending letters to professors that are not exactly in the same research area, it will look it will not look good if you use the same template for everyone. So you need to adjust some elements so that the professor feels that that letter was written to them. And don't expect immediate responses. So one thing that it's important is that you are persistent, but also patient. Don't push people into replying to you, because obviously if they haven't replied to you, it's because they are doing other stuff, or it's because they are busy with conferences, or they are not in the office. So, you know, just make sure that you give enough time for people to reply. By enough time, usually I advise you to wait for 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks, if you don't hear back, send a reminder email. So one very good source of information is the CALDO website. I'm going to go over the website in just a few moments so that you have an idea of some tools that you can use. This is one of the sections of the website that we are going to look at, tools to apply. So if you are interested in contacting us at the office, and if you haven't done it in the past, you can contact us to graduate.coordinator@caldo.ca. So you can write us in Spanish or in Portuguese, and we will be able to assist you in anything that you need at the time that you're contacting us. So something that I would like to share with you now is a small video on studying in Canada, just for you to hear from some people that have studied here and what are their opinions about why studying in Canada. So this is a short 5-minute video, and I'll be back after the video.
I grew up in Orange County. Moving to Canada was kind of a shock.
I'm from India, and I'm doing my master's in biomedical engineering.
Hi, my name is Felipe Luzardo. I am from Colombia.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Aïcha et puis j'étudie en gestion internationale.
Hi, my name is Anna.
Hi, my name is Anastasia.
And we're from Ukraine.
And we study nursing.
Hello, my name is Tong and I'm from China. I came to Canada in 2010 to study Master of Public and International Affairs.
Hi, my name is Aziz Nasher. I'm from Yemen and I graduated with a Bachelor's of Commerce in Accounting. Why study in Canada?
So why I decided to come to Canada, that's a really great question, because
A lot of my friends thought, oh, you're going to Canada, it's not an American university, but the quality of education, the professors, they come from the most prestigious universities.
To me, the quality of education is the fact that it's recognized all over the world.
It offers you an edge over the others.
so if you compare the quality and the price, I think Canadian universities is absolutely a better choice.
In terms of cost, I was paying a lot less, but the quality was on par with what I had already experienced in an American university.
The cost for me to stay in Canada about 2 years can only support me to stay in America for only 1 year.
After I submitted my application, it was 3 days that I got my visa in my hand. I did everything on my own. I just went online to the immigration website and I got all the forms from there. I filled it myself and everything is like crystal clear. I really had fun enjoying the winter activities here.
There's lots of stuff to do. There's skating, there's cross-country skiing, downhill ski, there's outdoor activities everywhere as long as you go outside and know how to take advantage of it.
I came here like 2 years ago to study English, and I fell in love with the country.
Je veux aussi insister sur le bilinguisme. C'est vraiment une grande opportunité pour moi de venir au Canada parce que ma langue maternelle en fait c'est le français.
I came here when I was 14 just to study English. and I like it. So I decided to come back here to college.
How interesting it is being in college here. There's so much hands-on experience and you learn what you really have to do when you go into the field.
The lab practice, it just gives us more confidence.
I'm studying hotel and restaurant management in a college, and my future plan is to open my own restaurant. I want to open something different. I have ideas in my mind, and probably I want to bring some of my culture here.
After graduating with my bachelor's degree, I decided to become a citizen.
I met people from Haiti, from Southeast Asia, East Asia, from the Middle East, from Africa, from Europe. I've met people from all over the world. Well, at least the metaphor that's used here is the mosaic. Everyone comes from the same different walks of life, from the same different corners of the world, and that's what's beautiful about it. There's no homogenized Canadian identities, that we're all a part of society as well.
Mais même si ma famille est éloignée en Côte d'Ivoire, je me sens pas étrangère ni mal accueillie. Puis je me sens vraiment bien ici. Comme je m'intègre facilement, ils sont accueillants et tout va bien ici.
They want you here.
I like the teaching style, and it taught me how to think, get more confidence, and you really learn something. And
After graduation, I had the opportunity to work in my field of study, and I've now become a chartered accountant working for a Canadian firm.
I chose Canada in the end, and I never regret my choice.
It's fun and it's a very different experience that I think everybody should get in life once.
You take home more than just a degree, you take home an experience of a lifetime that's unmatched anywhere else.
So it really wasn't much of a choice. It was obvious. I had to come to Canada. It's beautiful. It's Canadian.
Okay, so this was basically just a brief video for those of you that are not familiar with studying in Canada. So something that I would like to share with you now is the following. I'm going to share with you some sections of the CALDO website. So I believe that you can now see the website. Just to give you an idea of where I am. So if you access to the CALDO website at caldo.ca, you are taken to the home page. The home page is basically has some of the menu options that you see throughout the website. And what I will do is I'm going to go directly to Tools to Apply. In Tools to Apply, you have in here some sections that are relevant to what we just discussed. So the first one is Find and Contact the Supervisor, which is this one. You also have information on how to write a statement of research, the difference between a course and a thesis-based master, how to write an academic CV, and then you have other sections here that were not covered, but they are also important for the application process. However, for what we discussed here, these ones that I just mentioned are the most relevant. Now, something that it's also important for you is this one, Steps to Apply. So the Steps to Apply have a shortcut to all the programs from the university. So the Steps to Apply have 4 steps: to find the program, find financing, find a supervisor, and apply. I will focus mostly on this one, find the program. In here, you have direct links to the graduate programs of all our universities. So for example, the one that I showed you at the presentation from Alberta, if you click here, you are taken to the page from Alberta where you can find all the programs that they offer. And the same thing for all the other universities. So this is one of the main advantages of using the CALDO website, is because it will save you a lot of time in looking for the information that you need. One other thing that I would like to highlight is the research areas. The research areas is a section that we put together based on the most popular programs of study that we have come to find most people are looking for. So for example, if you go to the engineering section, you will find different engineerings that are the most popular based on what the candidates are looking for. Once again, this is just the most popular ones. This is not everything. Between the 10 universities, the universities offer more than 4,000 programs. So obviously we're not going to put them all here. So this is just for you to have an idea of which universities, for example, offer civil and environmental engineering. So you click here and you see that these universities offer the program. And if you click in each university, you are taken to the research area of that particular department. Okay, so based on what we talked before, you should identify the program, you should identify the research areas, and then the supervisor. So in this case, we are in the civil and environmental engineering from the University of Waterloo. You have in here different research areas, so transportation engineering, for example. And if you click here, you get information on, for example, major areas of study. So you have in here which are the areas of study. Current research activities, so the type of research that it's being done at the university. The research centers and labs, so the research centers for this particular area of transport engineering. So this is just an example of how you get information on the program. And then you have in here the transportation faculty members, so the professors that are associated with civil engineering in the research area of transportation. So if you click on each of them, you have access to their profile. So you see here that when you click here, you have access to Professor Jeff profile. And you have the personal website here. So for more information, you click on the personal website. So this is then a chain. So you just need to follow the links so that you are able to get an idea of what the professors are doing. Okay, so hopefully this gives you an overview of what are the possibilities for looking for the information. Our website has many more things, so I'm not going to go into the website because it's not the topic of this webinar, but if you have time, please explore. And also in our Facebook channel, there is a video on the website that was just published last week. We did a live webinar on the website, so you have information there. One other thing that I would like to show you is the following. At CALDO, we have a dedicated platform for all students that are considering to apply for a scholarship from their home country and that are looking to find a supervisor. This application platform is available at apply.caldo.ca, and you should read the welcoming message and basically what this platform should be used for in the main page. You create an account, and once you create the account, you just do a login and you start you create a profile. That's basically what you do. The profile is based on very simple things like personal information, so basically your personal data, academic background, which sort of academic background you have, so what degrees you have, and you can have as many degrees as needed. Okay, so usually bacharelado, master's, PhD, or diplomas or certificates. Okay, those are the four main types of information that you can put here. Then there are some documents that are required. So these documents are the transcript, the translated transcript, the CV, the statement of research, and the language proficiency test if you have it. All these documents, we talked about them in the presentation. If you have other supporting documents, you can also add them using this add a new file. It's important that you highlight which is the type of financing that you're considering applying to. So there are some here by default, and if the one that you are considering using is not here, you can also click on other, and it will show up, it will open up a text box for you to write down. What program are you thinking on applying? So if it's a PhD, if it's a postdoc, if it's a master, if it's a visiting research, if you have a starting date that you would like to start, usually don't apply to programs more than 2 years in advance. So if you're applying now, you should be applying for programs that start September 2019 or January 2020, not more than that. And then you select the program of interest that you're considering. So there's a search engine here. You basically just type the program of interest that you're considering. Eventually, if you have a preference for one university, you can select it. If not, you just leave any. So for example, if you put civil, if you're looking for civil engineering, and you see the different options here, and you just scroll to the university that you're interested, or if you're interested in a particular university, just put the one that you're interested in. You click submit, and oops, sorry, you select the program, you click submit, and it shows up here. So the purpose of this platform is to assist you in getting in touch with a supervisor. Okay, so you need to have, after selecting a program, you need to write here the name of the professor that you're considering in contacting, and you can put more than one. I usually don't advise putting more than 3 because afterwards it just gets too crowded. Some comments that you can write here. And basically, when everything is done, you submit the application. If things are incomplete, you just save the draft, and that's it. You come back whenever you have the rest of the information. So now let's just open up the presentation for any questions that you may have. We have gone through a lot of things, so hopefully this has given you a better idea of how to contact supervisors. But we now have some time where you can ask questions and I can reply to them within the available time that we still have. So please feel free to write the questions in Spanish, Portuguese, English, as you prefer. Depending on the number of questions, I may be able to answer them all or not. So if I haven't answered your question, you can always send us an email, and we will try to answer the question by email. Okay, so I can see that some people are writing, so I'm assuming that some questions should be coming up. Okay, so Christina is asking if someone already has a master's degree and some research background, would it be possible to reduce the PhD for less than 4 years? So Christina, usually I have never less than 4-year PhD in CALDO Universities. I know that some universities in other places, especially in other countries, might have the possibility of doing a PhD in less than 4 years, but not in CALDO Universities. Usually the minimum is 4 years. Robert is asking what is the recommended number of pages for the CV. So Robert, unless you have a very extensive set of publications and research or conferences that you participated, usually I wouldn't advise sending a CV with more than 5 pages. Usually most people will use 2 or 3 pages. However, if you have a lot more information, please make sure that you put that in your CV so that the professor knows what you're interested in doing. Luke is asking if for course-based master you need to have an area of research. No, course-based masters don't have research, so you don't need a supervisor. It's much simpler. You just need to apply to the program and make sure that you meet the academic requirements like the GPA, the academic average, and the language, and eventually any other tests that you might require. But that's it. You don't need any supervisor. Renata is asking if in Laval, in the University of Laval, you can apply using only English, or you also need French. So Renata, that will depend on the type of supervisor that you have. If you just want to do a visiting PhD, a doutorado sanduíche, then you don't need to show evidence. You don't need a test to show evidence of your language skills. However, you need to obviously find a supervisor that wants to work with you in English. And a lot of professors are able to work in English at the University level. So that shouldn't be a big issue. You should be able to do your PhD sandwich with an English-speaking supervisor. What can I do if the research area that I'm looking for cannot be found in CALDO's platform? So Angelica, there might be a couple of programs that our universities don't offer. However, if you don't, if the question is about the CALDO Apply platform, the one that I just mentioned, you just write a note in the comment box of the program that you are considering, or send us an email, and we are able sometimes to upload the program if it's a program that it's missing in the database for some reason. I don't know, it might be a new program or something that changed name. So we might be able to do that update right away, and you can submit the information in our platform. Aurora is asking if the translation can be done by the candidate. So Aurora, yes, you can do it just when you're contacting the supervisor. However, for the formal application to the program, it needs to be done by a translator, okay? And it needs to be done by a recognized translator in your home country, not just someone that says that is a translator. Let me just see. Javier is asking, primeiro devem aceptar para hacer el papel das becas. Canadá oferece algumas becas. So there are two questions here. So for most of the scholarships, for most of the becas, you will need the admission letter of the university first. So you need to apply to the university first, and then you apply to the scholarship, to the beca. The CALDO Universities, they also offer financing for students. If the supervisors are really interested in working with a particular student, they can offer you a beca, okay? But as you may anticipate, it's a very competitive process. So if you are a very strong student in terms of academics, that might be good. However, if you're not an exceptional student, then probably if you're bringing a scholarship from your own country, then it might be easier to get admission into the program. Lina is asking if las pruebas de idioma son eliminatorias para obtener el cupo. Yes, so if you don't meet the minimum language requirement, usually you are not able to be admitted. However, it depends on how popular the program is. So for example, if you're applying to a program that still has some spots left, and if your language requirement, for example, is an IELTS of 6 and the required is an IELTS of 6.3, then maybe you should be able to apply. But if the program is very popular, then it's very difficult to get admission if you don't meet the minimum language requirement. Jesus is asking if the same steps apply for a master and a PhD. Yes, it's very similar. Obviously, if it's a master with research, it's very similar to a PhD. However, some master programs don't require that you find a supervisor before applying. Okay, so there's a bit more flexibility in the masters, while in the PhDs you always need a supervisor for applying to the program. Marcos is asking if age is considered for acceptance. Yes, in some cases, if it's not so much related to the age, but related to how long you did your last degree. So for example, if you did your master's degree 10 years ago and you're trying to apply to a PhD in a field that is, for example, engineering or health sciences, it might be difficult because things have changed a lot since the last time you were studying in that field. And I'm assuming that you were doing something else professionally, obviously. But if you are applying to social sciences or humanities, then it might not be an issue. Because, for example, if you're studying old literature or cultures from the medieval time, obviously those things, they don't change. They are still the same. So that's not an issue. So Luke, I already answered your question. You don't need a supervisor for a course-based master, so you don't need research. Aline, I also answered the question if the language is a criteria to eliminate candidates, and yes, it would be if the program is very competitive. In some cases, there are some programs that might give you a conditional admission letter. The conditional admission letter is a letter that says that you meet all the requirements for the program except one, for example, language. And what that basically means is that you have to meet the minimum level of language before the program starts in order to be eligible to start the program. So let's imagine that you have admission for a program that starts September 2019, but your letter was conditional to language. What happens is that you need to send the university confirmation that you have done the test once again. So for example, let's imagine that you need a TOEFL 88 and you have a TOEFL 80. So before the program starts, you have the university evidence that you took the TOEFL once again and your score was 88 or more, or else you are not able to start the program. Some universities also offer the opportunity for some students to come to Canada and do what it's called a pathway program before the program starts. So you take some English classes, you can then start the master or the PhD. However, please note that this is something you can only do if you come to Canada. You cannot do it online, okay? Jose is asking, I sent some emails to research, but I did not have a response. So Jose, like I was mentioned at the presentation, supervisors they may not reply to you if they are too busy, if they have too many emails, or it might be a sign that they have read your email and they were not interested and they didn't give you any feedback, which can also happen, unfortunately. Ideally, what I suggest is that you go back to the professors and try to reach out to them and get an idea of what's happening, if it's something that they haven't seen your previous email or not. If they haven't replied to you after that follow-up, send me an email and specify exactly which are the professors that you're trying to contact, and send me your CV and an academic and a statement of research, so that we can see if there's anyone at the university that could eventually reach out to the professors. The application for, Marcelo is asking if the application for a visiting PhD is the same as the other process. Not really. For a visiting PhD is a bit easier because you don't need the language test, for example, for most programs. You just need to get in touch with the professor. As long as the professor accepts you, you then apply. But it's a somewhat different process that I don't have all the details. So if you're not sure, I can put you in contact with someone from the university that will be able to assist you with that. Let me see some more questions here. There are several questions, so I'm just trying to see some that I haven't replied yet. So Lilian is asking about a particular program, Estudos Latinoamericanos. There are universities that have this sort of program, but I don't know at the top of my head which of them, which are. So I would suggest that for specific programs, you need to send us an email so that we have enough time to see which universities offer the program that you're interested in. So Cesar is asking if there's any list with the name and contact of all the supervisors for all the universities, or you should look one by one. So yes, Cesar, there is no central database of contact of supervisors. What happens, what we try to do at the CALDO website, for example, is simplify a bit the process in putting you within the most popular research areas, all the links for the programs in each university. However, there is no such database of all the contacts. So you can write to us and we can forward you the information, but it will always be the professor for each university individually, not like a central database of contacts. Let me see some other questions that you have here. Maria Isabel is asking if there's the opportunity of do a PhD part-time in Canada. So if you're an international student, you can only study full-time. So there's no option of studying part-time. And that's because immigration would not give you a study permit to study part-time. César is asking, ¿qué vigencia tiene la carta de aceptación de la universidad? So usually the acceptance letter from the university has a specific deadline. So it says that the student needs to start the program by a specific date. Usually that date is defined between the supervisor and the student, or it's the date of the next admission period. Okay, so usually it's not like in 2 years or in 1 year and a half. So usually it's a somewhat short deadline. So a couple of months, 6 months, most likely maximum. Aurora is asking, can I get a scholarship with an investigation along with the supervisor? So I'm assuming your question, Aurora, is if you can get a dual scholarship from a partner agency and a supervisor. If that's the question, you can. However, when you receive a scholarship from a partner agency, for example, let's imagine you're from Mexico, I don't know, but someone from Mexico receives a scholarship from CONACYT, and then the supervisor tells the student, okay, I'm also going to give you a scholarship. So usually the person needs to inform the agency in their home country that they are receiving a second scholarship, and the scholarship from the agency is then adjusted. So it's reduced because you're receiving another scholarship. So you are not supposed to be making money out of scholarships. You are just supposed to receive enough money to study. Aline is asking, how difficult are the English tests? So Aline, you have two main tests. You have the TOEFL IBT and the IELTS academic. Okay. In our website, in the tools to apply, you have some specifications about each of the tests. So that's something that you can read. And one other thing that you can do is the following. Usually the TOEFL is a test that it's done all on the computer. So some people prefer that than doing it on paper because the IELTS has a paper component. So IELTS is usually more writing and writing, and the TOEFL is all on the computer. So that can be something to help you decide. Something important is that you always prepare before taking the test. Don't take the test without doing several replicas of the test. So you need to practice the test over and over so that you're familiar with the content and that you're comfortable with the time that you have to do all the tasks, and also the different English accents that you will hear during the test, which is something that if you're not familiar is not easy. So Bernardo is asked, can I prove English proficiency in an American institution transcript? So if you have done your previous degree or you've studied for more than 2 years, I think, in an English-speaking university, you might not need to take the language test. Okay, so if you, for example, let's imagine that you're applying to a PhD and you did your master in an English-speaking university. Most likely, you don't need to take an English test, a language test in this case. Let me see some other questions that are here, so that so Aurora is asking if there are extra requirements that supervisors look for in students. So basically what supervisors are looking for in students are research compatibility. So making sure that whatever the student is interested in doing is what the professor is interested in doing. That's the first thing. The second thing is if there is if the personality of both people match. So as you can understand, if you're working during a PhD for 4 years with the same person, you need to get along really well. So one thing is also to understand if the professor and the candidate, if there's a good match there. And other things would be the references. Okay, so you should have good references, good professors that could speak highly of you. Because that's something also that plays a huge role in the admission process. Outside of that, there is pretty much not much to take into account except all the academic abilities of the student. Obviously, you know, the academic average, the language skills, the research experience, if it has publication experience or not. You are also asking about additional tests. So you're mentioning here the GRE. The GRE is usually not requested in most programs. The only ones for which the GRE are mostly requested are business and management programs, and also some specific programs such as computer science or programs in physics or mathematics, especially for students that have not studied in Canada. But outside of that, for almost all programs, that test is not required. Okay. Someone is asking, Christine is asking here about the Canadian school year calendar. So the school year in calendar, the Canadian school here usually starts in September, and then it goes all the way to May. The vacation, like the class, if you don't have summer classes, usually you stop in May and you start your lessons in September next year. So that's how it works. Let me see if there's any other question that's relevant to answer. This will be the last question that I will be answering. Someone is asking here about other English tests, such as the first certificate of English. So it's Leonardo asking about this. So if you have a TOEFL, IBT, or IELTS academic, you're accepted by any program. That's a fact, and it's not up to discussion. If you have other tests, it depends. Some departments might accept it, some may not. So my recommendation is that if you're unsure about the test that you have and if it's accepted by the different departments that you're interested in, send us an email and we are able to confirm that for you. Outside of that, I'm not able to tell you because obviously it's the university, they don't list all the possible tests that they admit, that they accept. Finally, and just to finish, Erandi is asking, where can I translate my transcript? Erandi, we don't have any list of people that you can use to translate your transcript. As long as it's a certified translator from your own country, that's fine. Usually you can find them in language schools, or if your university translates the documents, that's perfect. If you do online search for translators in your home city, as long as the person that you're requesting the service writes a letter confirming that he or she is a certified translator, that should be fine. Okay. Like you mentioned here, if your university does it, then that's perfect. That will basically, you don't need to do anything else. You just ask your university to do it. So we are now at the end of our time. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. Hopefully this was clarifying for you. The idea is that you are able to get a sense of how to contact the professor. It's very simple, but you just need to follow some basic steps that will enable you to be successful. This presentation will be available tomorrow. You will all receive a link of the YouTube where the presentation is recorded, so you can rewatch it, and eventually, if you haven't attended the presentation since the beginning, or if you lost connection, it's an opportunity to watch the information all over again. Any questions that you may have, please write us to graduate.coordinator@caldo.ca, and we will be more than happy to assist you in any way that we can. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the day. Take care.